In this video, we're going to look at creating a basic label using the 4-step basic label creation method in Lighthouse for Max 10. The beauty of this method is that it can be applied to pretty much any kind of sign or label that it is that you require. So something from a health and safety sign, like a warning sign we have on the screen here, to something like an asset label, a pipe marker, continuous improvement signage, anything that you like, the basic steps will always remain the same. So as an example, let's try and create this warning sign that we have on screen at the moment. So firstly, you'll need to open your software, select your printer type, and you'll then be presented with a default label size on the screen. Now, of course, we don't have to stick with this default label size, which may vary depending on the printer type that you have, but the steps will remain the same. And you can, of course, create a label that is smaller or that is longer than what's on the screen at the moment. And of course, you can duplicate these labels to create a batch as well. Quite commonly, when people are new to the software, if they're not quite sure how to do this, we quite commonly see labels being designed, say, in the corner if it is smaller than what's the default label size, and this design is then copied and pasted across the white space in a similar way to how we might use Word, for example, which is understandable. However, this method does open you up to a few issues. So for example, the human error element side of things, if you're copying and pasting information, there's every chance that that information could be missed out at parts. And secondly, it's quite time consuming. So instead, get the software to do this for you instead. So to tell the software the size of the label that it is that you're creating and to set how many labels it is that is required, click on the Document Properties button at the top of the software, and this will open a window for you. In this window, there are a few tabs on the left-hand side. You don't need to worry about the printer tab because you've just set that as you opened the label file up. In this instance, I'm going to be using a CPM 100 HG5E, but again, the steps will remain the same. You then have the label dimensions tab and the paper tab, which are the two tabs that you'll use most commonly. Under the paper tab, you see we have the orientation where you can choose whether you would like the label to be portrait or landscape. It's always worth changing these around because you can make the best use of the material by changing these around and minimizing any kinds of wastage. This can be changed at any point as well. Once you're happy with the orientation, you can then head to the label dimensions. And inside here, you can tell the software the size of the label that it is that you require. So for example, in this instance, I'm going to create a label that is 50mm by 50mm. And as I change these numbers, you see the example on the right hand side then changes to look like the label that it is required. A little further down in this window, you then have this labels across section with a horizontal count and a vertical count. This is where you'll begin to duplicate the labels within the software. So if I introduce more labels under the horizontal count, you see it adds them to the right hand side. And that's because I'm still technically in the landscape mode under orientation. If I then add the vertical count, labels will then be added underneath this. If I go beyond this, you see a warning message then appears at the top, which is just to let me know that I've gone beyond the parameters of the material. So of course, in this instance, 3 times 50 would equal 150mm, which goes over the full 100mm width that we can use. So you'll need to acknowledge this before you can move any further. Once you are inside those parameters, the message will then disappear. You can increase these parameters up to a length of 1.5 meters that the printer can handle at a time. You can print as many runs as you like, it's just the printer can only handle 1.5 meters at a time as a maximum. Once you set the label amount and the sizes that you need, you can then press OK, and this is updated on the screen for you. If we zoom out, you'll then notice that we have these grey boxes on the screen as well. This is just to represent the duplicated labels. So anything that is designed inside the white space is automatically duplicated inside the grey boxes for you. So it minimises the copying and pasting need. Now initially during the design process, you will not see anything happening on these grey boxes. That's just to prevent any confusion, but you can always preview the labels at any time by heading to print and they will be displayed on the screen for you. Now this is the first step complete of the 4-step label creation process. So we have chosen the size and orientation of the label and then also told the software how many labels we would like to print in one batch. The second step is then to introduce text onto the labels. So we have the design toolbar on the left hand side of the software. And there are two different text options. We have text and text box. These text options have their pros and cons depending on what it is that you would like to do within the label, but you may find that you use one more frequently than most, which tends to be this text option in the top left corner. So to use any of these options, just click the option you would like to use first and then click onto the label and it will become active for you. You can then start typing in the information that is required. Once you're happy with that information, just click away from that and it's inserted into the label, where you can then click on the text again. You can move that around as freely as you like, and of course you can resize as required. In addition to this, just like in Word, we've got different font types as well. This will also include any personalized fonts that you might have downloaded and installed onto your computer. They will also show up in the software for you. You can also choose the sizings as well. You can type inside this box just like in Word to have a very specific size, and of course we have the bold, italic, underline and strike through feature on here as well. Now the one thing that the software doesn't have in comparison to Word is a spell check. The main reason for this is a lot of people do use the software to design signs and labels that are multi-language, and trying to get a dictionary to cover all these bases is very difficult to do so. So you can instead have the text checked outside of the software first, and you can then copy and paste it into the software once you're happy. However, if you have already typed something into the label and you need to make an alteration to it, you don't have to delete the entire thing. You can just modify the text on the screen. And to do this, just select the text first and then click on the three lines in the corner, which will open a properties box. We'll be using these properties boxes frequently, and it's the easiest way to make modifications to anything that's on your label. So whether it's, say, a piece of text, a graphic, a cut shape, anything at all, you can use the properties box to make changes to it. So in this instance, if I want to add anything in or take anything out from the text, I can quite simply do it in the box to the right, and that's then updated on the screen live for me. There are a few other tabs inside here as well, where you can see we've got the different font types and sizes available to us as well. There's just different places to find these, and you'll find your flow with this as you use the software and get used to it, but the effects will always be the same no matter where you choose to use them. So that's the first text option, which you may commonly use. It's the quickest way to get text inside the software and looking exactly how you would like to, but there may be times when you choose to use the text box option. So if we want to use this option again, just click the text box in the top left corner and click onto your label where it will become active. You can then resize that text box to the size that is required. If you click away from this text box, you'll notice it always has a grey dashed line around the outside. This will not print. These text boxes work in the same way as text boxes work in Word. So you will allocate a space for text to appear in. And if you modify the text that goes inside that box, it will never go beyond the boundaries of that box. So this means you could place a piece of text incredibly close to the edge of a label, update the information that goes inside that text box, and it will never wander into the label next door or potentially interfere with anything else that's on the label. So most commonly this method or this text box option is used with more variable based data. So the software does have more advanced features where you can link to things like Excel or do things like sequential numbers that will change on every label that you have set up. And of course, if that information varies quite wildly, you don't want it to interfere with anything else or the label next door. So adding the boundaries of that text box on there reduces any kind of worry about anything happening on the label. Now, just to keep this nice and simple, we're going to remove the text box for now and stick with the first text method. Now, when it comes to aligning things on the label and placing them exactly where you need them to be, you can of course do this by hand and by eye, but this can be very difficult to do so to get bang on in place. So instead, you can get the software to do this hard work for you instead. So click the object that you would like to move around. Again, this can be any object that's on your label file. Once selected, you'll see we have an alignment toolbar at the top of the software. Now, if you hover over these buttons, they will tell you what they do. So we have left, center horizontally, and right, and then top, center vertically, and bottom. So whichever option I select in this instance with the text selected, you see that then moves that around the label where I need it to be. So if I would like this to be in the very center of the label, I can click the center option going horizontally, and then the vertical alignment tool, and that then pops that into the center of the label. And again, this is duplicated on these grey boxes for us when we preview those labels later on. So I'm going to place my text at the very bottom here and just make it a little larger, and then centralize that to make it neater. So once you've introduced your text onto the label, that's the second step of this process complete. So now we can move to the third step, which is to introduce any kind of clip art onto the label. So whether that's something that is built into the software already, such as health and safety symbols, arrows, things like that. There is a big clip art gallery built in already. Or you can also introduce your own imagery, and this can vary depending on the type of printer that you have. At this stage as well, the third step, you might also want to introduce things like barcodes or QR codes that the software can create for you automatically as well. So to introduce any images into the label that are built into the software already, so images that are ready to print, ready to use without any kind of manipulation needed, you can click on the clip art option on the toolbar on the left, and then click onto the label. This will then open the clip art gallery window, and if you press the little drop down arrow to the side of CPM, you see we have different categories available to choose from, which are in alphabetical to try and make it easier to navigate. Some of these categories will have images where they are single colour, other categories where you'll find them in multicolour, and then other categories where you may find them in multicolour as well as in a single colour as well. So for example, the warning symbol that we have just here is in yellow and black, and a little further down in this category we also have these symbols in a single colour as well. The main reason for this is to try and provide you with the cheapest method of being able to create your signs and labels. So to create a warning sign in the cheapest method possible, you would use this single colour graphic on the screen here and print that black image onto a yellow base material, like a yellow vinyl for example, and you'll then have yourself a warning symbol in the correct colours and printed in the cheapest method. Alternatively, a lot of people do tend to use the white material just for the versatility and to create multicolour signs and labels, in which case you would utilise the yellow and black version of the symbol to print the yellow and print the black onto a white vinyl instead. So it's a little bit more expensive, but there are options and versatility inside of here, and you get used to them with time, knowing which is best for you to create your signs and labels as you get used to the software. But with any image that you do find in this clip art gallery, quite simply click the symbol that you want to use, press OK, and that then gets popped into the label for you, where you can move it around, resize it, and also move it around in the same way as we did with the text earlier on. You can also introduce multiple symbols inside the labels as well. There's no restriction on how many you can use. So for example, I'm also going to introduce the single colour version of this warning symbol as well. Now the reason for this is to demonstrate how we can change the colours of these symbols. So it's very simple to do so. When it comes to things like text, we can quite simply click on the text itself, and we have the colour bar at the top of the software which we can then click on to create more bespoke colour text. Now if you want to do this with any of the graphics, again click the graphic that you want to change the colour of, but if you click on the colour bar here, you see nothing happens at the moment. The main reason for this is to try and prevent you from changing the colours of the symbols that are already set to the colours that are required under the legislation for them. However, there is the ability to be able to change the colour of these symbols. You just need to tweak some of the properties of that image. So we're going to start with a single colour image to begin with. So quite simply click on the single colour image and then click on the three lines to open its properties box. So along the tabs across the top, if you click on the style option, and at the very bottom of this tab you see a box that is ticked and it says separate colours during print. This is the barrier that is stopping you from being able to change the colours of that image. So all you need to do is untick that box, and you'll then be able to click on that colour bar to create a symbol that's a little bit more bespoke. You can also choose from the drop down list as well if required. Now you can also do the same method with the multicolour image as well, so we can click that option, click the three lines, the properties box will open, and again under the style tab there will be a box for you to untick. However, when we do that with this symbol, you see it doesn't quite have the same effect. It turns into a single colour image. You can change the colour of these, however we don't recommend to do this as there can sometimes be print quality issues with these symbols. So instead we recommend for you to change the colour of this single colour alternative for that symbol instead, and you won't come across any issues with printing that out or any kind of print quality issues. Don't panic if you do ever do this with any of the symbols that were already set to the colours they need to be. Again, you can just click on it, click on the 3 lines, and again under the Style tab, re-tick Separate Colours during print, and the symbol will go back to its original settings for you. So those are images that are built into the software, but you can also introduce your own images into your label files, and these will print in a variety of ways depending on the kind of printer that you have available to you. So to bring in your own imagery, quite simply click on Picture on the left-hand toolbar and click onto your label. This will then open a browsing window where you can then browse to the location of where you have your images saved. So things like JPEGs, PNGs, PDFs can be introduced into your labels. However, for the best quality print, we recommend something called a Windows Metafile type image or a WMF type image, which will print in the best quality and in solid form. However, if you're not quite sure what images to use, please feel free to get in touch with us and we will be happy to advise. In this instance, I'm going to introduce the Lighthouse logo as a WMF, so a Windows Metafile image. So click what you want to use, press open, and it's then introduced into the label file where you can resize and move around as required. So once you have your imagery inside your label files, as mentioned, you might want to also pop a QR code, a barcode onto your labels as well. This is possible within the software, and you can see we have the barcode option on the left hand side. To introduce these into your label, quite simply click onto the barcode option, click onto your label, and a basic barcode will be popped into the label for you. To change what this barcode looks like, quite simply click on the 3 lines in the corner to bring that properties box back up, and then you can change the information that's inside of here, a little bit like the text from earlier on. So in this instance, we might want to pop in a website and have this as a QR code. So firstly, type in the information that you need. To change this barcode to a QR code, quite simply click on the barcode tab, and you see we have the barcode type here. Click on that drop down list. These are in alphabetical order by barcode type, so 1D and 2D. QR code is at the very bottom of this list. Click on there, and we then have a QR code that is ready to print and will print solidly for you as well. The benefit of these, having them on the screen, is you can quite often scan them on the screen, so from something like a mobile phone. So if you do ever want to check the information is working correctly, you can scan these from the screen as required. These barcodes and QR codes can also be variable as well, so if you need to link them to information that may be in an Excel spreadsheet or to a sequential number, for example, that is also possible. And again, we have user guides on this, or please feel free to get in touch on how to do so. So once you have your imagery inside your label file, or barcodes and QR codes if you do need them, that is essentially the 3rd step complete. So you can then move to the 4th step and the final step, and probably the most important step, which is to introduce what is called a cut shape. So quite commonly when people are new to the software, they'll see the line around the outside of the label space and automatically assume that this is the line that the printer will recognise as the one that you would like to cut it out as. And this isn't quite the case. It doesn't recognise that line at all, and the printer will not cut those lines. The main reason being is we need to keep in mind that these printers can cut to any shape and size that is required. So you may be cutting a label out or printing a label with a very specific shape, a bespoke type shape, or a circle or triangle, any shape at all, and trying to manipulate this white space to look like anything other than a square or a rectangle is very difficult to manipulate. So you introduce a cut shape into the label, which the printer then recognises, which is quite simply an outline that you would like. It will then recognise this line and cut this line out for you. Now, there are 2 methods in which to introduce cut shapes into your label. Firstly, we have the cut shape tool in the toolbar on the left hand side. This is mainly used for things like squares and rectangles, but to use this option, just click on the cut shape tool, click onto the label, and a very simple box will be introduced. However, you'll notice with this shape, a pair of scissors will be in the bottom right corner to indicate that this is going to cut out for you. Now at this point you do have the option to resize this shape by hand if preferred. However, getting this set perfectly and then also getting it put bang on in place around the outside of the label can be very difficult to do so. So again, get the software to do this hard work for you. So we can get it to do two things. We can get it to set the size of the cut shape and then also to place it perfectly around the outside of our label. To do this, quite simply click on the three lines in the top right corner to bring its properties box up and click on the position tab. Inside of here, you'll notice we have the width and the height of what that cut shape is currently set to. So I'm just going to match my label size that I put in the very beginning, so 50 by 50. Again, as I tab through these, you'll notice the cut shape then updates on screen live and is now the right size for my label. And to get this cut shape bang on in place around the outside of the label, I can quite simply use the alignment toolbar in the software. So in this instance, all I need to choose is the center option going left to right, and then the vertical center option. And you can see this cut shape is now placed perfectly around the outside of my label. And again, this cut shape will be applied to all of our other labels as well, so you do not need to put any cut shapes around the grey boxes at all. Now, the additional method in terms of introducing cut shapes into the label is so if you need something that's more bespoke, such as a circle, a triangle, anything like that, there are cut shapes built into the clip art gallery as well. So again, to access these, click on the clip art option on the toolbar on the left, click onto your label, and again under the CPM category, press the drop down arrow to the side of this, and there is a category in here called cut shapes. So these cut shapes are all set, and you see there's lots of squares, rectangles inside of here. The further down you go, the shapes become more bespoke. You have your circles, triangles inside of here, and then some very bespoke type shapes at the bottom as well. Again, you can select any one of these that is required inside your label and it will be introduced. So we may want the circle, for example, press OK. That's then introduced into the label, and again you'll notice the scissors in the bottom right corner to notify us that this outline is going to cut and is not going to print. Now you can insert as many cut shapes into the label as is required, so I have my cut shape around the outside, and I could opt to have other cut shapes inside of there. I may want to cut the triangle out, for example, or have additional things cut out on that label. But once you do have your cut shapes inside your label, that is the fourth and final step complete of the basic 4-step label creation. So once you're happy with that design and everything is correct, you can then head to print, where you will then see your labels appear on the screen to preview and make sure that everything is set correctly. If everything is correct and you're happy to do so, you can then click on print, and all of these will be sent to the printer for printing and cutting.